All right, y'all. All right, let's kick it to the one to two. Okay, my bad. So I'm sorry for the late, you know, upload because I had a family emergency last week, so I wasn't able to upload it last week. Pretty much took up the entirety of my weekend. I'm gonna probably start doing these in advance, probably early on in the week, Monday, Tuesday, preferably. So if you want to hop on, just the future notion. If you want to hop on hop on this, video cast podcast that I do have currently. Make sure that you hit me up in my Discord link, which will be Discord, which the link for that will be in the description of this video. Another thing, not going face cam today. Generally because my computer is not connected to my internet. I don't know why. So if somebody could tell, direct me into why that's happening, that would be 100 times better than, anything I could come up with. I've tried everything I know. So most definitely, if you can help me with that, that would be wonderful. But anyway, back to the subject at hand. What we're talking about today is African Americans and religion. Now, this is something that I've highly thought about and I've taken a lot into consideration. So these are just kind of things that I want to talk about. Well, not even what I want to talk about. It's something that needs to be talked about because there's always been a confusion about African Americans as it turns to religion. We all just, blindly accept the fact that somebody, a religion somebody else gave us is just, our defined de facto religion without actually trying to do any research into, original religions that were back in Africa and that were more or less vocal, if I want to say it like that, not written, not reading from a book, not sitting there and preaching to hypocrisy to people, but actually vocalizing what was needed to be said and how it was needed to be done. So we're gonna kind of talk over that. So 3 talking points for today. I'm gonna give you guys 3 talking points for today. The first one is going to be the earlier stages of religion inside of African culture. So that's the first one. The next one is going to be the rise of Christianity. And then lastly, I'm going to kind of give my thoughts on the whole ordeal. And, how it kind of affects us in the long haul. So, we know what the deal is. I ain't about to, badger y'all with this every week. If y'all like it, comment, subscribe. I'm going to try to be more upbeat with it. Most of the time when I'm recording this, I am dead ass sleepy or, not really feeling that well. So definitely what I'm going to be doing now is taking a different approach. But without further ado, let's get on and get into the rest of this video. Let's get it. So first thing we need to discuss and first things we need to know is the early religion in the continent of Africa. So as we know, Africa is a vast continent. It spans quite a large portion of the world. Not even of the world, but I want to say the Eastern Hemisphere, give or take. Counting by how humid it is most of the time. So you would think, as black people, we would at least know the basics of our early religion, seeing as most of us has either jump shipped from our, whatever religion that our ancestors, forefathers or whatever have previously established and just jumped on to, here's Christianity, God, Jesus Christ, stuff like that. And here's a Bible written by men, be mindful, that we're just going to listen to blindly without even questioning it. And hopefully it works out for us. No. So let me just give y'all a rundown. All right. So let me just kind of give y'all a rundown on what's going on at this given time. So the earliest religion known to Africa was in the Blombos caves in South Africa, where people may have been using red orchies for funerals about 100,000 years ago. These red orchies are kind of similar to, I want to say, and I'm probably generally wrong with this, but the red orchies are kind of similar to the I want to say sarcophagus, but tombs in Egypt. So it's kind of one of those weird things. So yeah, it's kind of like a tomb. It's not coming up for me on my phone, but it's kind of like a tomb that the Egyptians basically used, but it was just for Southern Africa and wasn't part of the Northern African hemisphere. So 3000 BC, and I think this is one of the, if not the first, religions to ever be known as ancient Egypt had its own set of ideologies. If you already know, ancient Egyptian folklore and mythologies and religions based itself on multiple deities. Some controlling the sky, some controlling death, some controlling the sun, others controlling, their version of hell. So there's a lot of different things that went into this religion. So about 3000 BC, people were already worshiping Iris, Osiris, Ra, and Amen. Further south in Sudan, the Kushites seem to have also worshipped these gods, along with their own main gods being Apidemark and Sebemikir, some Nubian gods, and also some Nubian gods like Bes seems to travel north from Sudan to Egypt too. So some of these gods kind of floated around in the African mythos a lot. So it just wasn't in one singular area. They all believed that Ra, Amen, Osiris, Iris, and kind of those different deities were worshipped, and they knew that they exist. But then there's also some that deviated, as Nubians had their own set of gods, and as you've seen, the Kushites had their own set, the different set of gods that were a bit different. So somewhere along the line, some things start to come together. Eastern Africa, however, south of Sudan, in Kenya, in Kenya, around the same time, people living around Lake Turkana built large cemeteries with mounds, stone circles, and large standing stones. We do not know who their gods were, but this is from an article, be mindful. They did not know who their gods were that they worshiped, but they thought funerals and cemeteries were important. So that, if you haven't seen it, the general upkeep of this is most of African religion in the earlier days were built around worshiping multiple gods, praying to multiple gods, and various, I want to say ceremonies that allowed them in their minds to pass one portion of the dead onto the next world peacefully. And if this wasn't done properly, which I'll get into further, it explains a little bit more of that further on into the article, but if it isn't done properly, then it does have negative consequences to it, and that's what they could, creates evil spirits and such. So in East Africa, most people didn't know, Eastern Africa, most people at this point did not know what gods they worship, but they knew, historians knew that funerals and cemeteries were a big portion of the rituals that transpired during, in that type of religion, which they, at the same time still do not know what's up. So if you're really wondering at this point in the video, 8 minutes, give or take in, where is Christianity? Don't worry, we're getting there. Christianity is one of those things that came into existence and wasn't as bad as it was today in the earlier parts of it, because it wasn't, how do I say, prophetized, if that makes sense. That doesn't happen for another, give or take, 3,000-4,000 years. But I digress. Continuing, Western Africa, however, the Bantu people seem to have been more monotheistic, monotheistic. God, I'm horrible at pronouncing words. I do apologize for that. They thought that of there being one God, sometimes a sky god or a sun god. So, again, general ideology is there's somebody controlling some aspects of it, some aspects of the world that they live in. Them thinking that the sun was this god, or the sky, because at this time nobody was in the sky. Sorry, nobody knew it was in the sky. Nobody knew of what was gone beyond that. Nobody knew what was up there. It wasn't until the 80s, 90s, 70s and shit that we started even exploring up there, or even before that. I really don't know. And it's even it's like in the 1900s, in the 20th century. So we hadn't even reached the 21st century. We just keep expanding towards that. So at this time, the ideology of a sky god that controlled and manifested everything was the main focus. While you had, and as you kind of seen through all the examples, in ancient Egypt they worshipped multiple gods. In Sudan, which would now be modern day Sudan, they worshipped multiple gods. But over in Western Africa and maybe even East Africa, it seemed that they only worshipped one god, as they thought that kind of worshiping multiple gods was a bit blasphemous, if that were to make sense. So now getting into the Greek and the Roman gods, and we already know the Greek and Roman gods, so I'm not even gonna go on to that. So pretty much the Greek and Romans do what the Greek and Romans already always done, and force their gods and religious beliefs onto other cultures that they have conquered. Yes, Rome did conquer Africa at one point, but it wasn't like a total dictatorship. They still, and let me just tell you this, Greek and Rome always would conquer places, but they would still allow them to govern themselves in a manner to where they can still believe in who they believe in, whatever guys they believe in, and a whole slew of other things, while also just getting taxes from them, or even implementing a little bit of their culture into them. So they didn't assimilate them, they just conquered them. Another time. Anywho, so if you haven't noticed, at this point, let's go to the late 680s. This is kind of the rise of the Islam religion. It is another monotheistic faith. Islam came to Africa first across the Red Sea to Somalia and Eritrea, then to Egypt. Do more about Islam right here, so I'm gonna kind of go through this, give you a brief overview of the Islamic faith. So, the religion of Islam, Tomb of Allah, the first Imam and the fourth Caliph in Iraq, was built about 15 AD by the Safavids. Oh, I hate when that happens. Free sites. Okay, so medieval Islam was closely related to Judaism and Christianity. Like Jews and Christians, Muslim people who follow Islam believed that there was only one God. They called this God Allah. Muslims believed that Moses and Jesus had both existed. They believed that Moses and Jesus were important holy men, and they believed that Muhammad was another holy man in the same line. Just to kind of give you a little bit of a background on that, if you hadn't already known. So Islam is the primary well, it's the only religion for Muslim people. So if you are a Muslim person, it means you do follow the book of, you follow the Quran and you follow the God Allah and Muhammad the Prophet. That was a religion that was somewhat inside of Egypt and Africa for a short time. It did go on a spread in this time to northern Africa. 100 years later, almost the entire population of Northern Africa had pretty much converted to being a Muslim. Being Muslims, not a Muslim. And they kind of just thrived from that portion. So, kind of getting into, kind of finishing off, what we've seen in earlier parts of Africa, it moved from believing and worshiping in multiple gods that were doing different things, ergo, Amen and Ra pretty much being, I think, the overall creator, which is Amen, and then the sun god, which is Ra, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong. The creator god, which is Amen, sun god, which is Ra. Osiris was the goddess of the sky. Iris was, I forgot what Iris was in all honesty, but these were kind of just guys that they had a mantle of at first, and what they looked forward to, worshipped, and prayed to for different reasons. As kind of time moved on, you've seen that going later on down, like the not Eastern Africa, but Northern Africa, and going down to like the Nubians, going south of Sudan, kind of picking up other gods and adapting them themselves, even having Greek and Roman gods intertwined with it to make it into something a little bit more intense, or kind of not intense, but more oriented. You find out later, before Christ is even born, that they then switch from that to being more of a one God religion. And it was slowly switching into that, with some cultures actually believing and worshiping to one God and not multiple gods at this time. So Islam is kind of like their first religion that came at 600 years after the death of Christ. And later on, Christianity does come in and get into it. Christianity was one of those religions that didn't hit Africa, if I am not mistaken, to about 650 after death. 650 after death, if I'm not mistaken, but I am currently looking it up. If I am not wrong, yeah. Christianity. Where did it go? I read it. Okay, so basically Christianity kind of came around the same time. Not going to go into extreme details with it, but Christianity did come around the same time as, the Muslim faith and everything else. As you see, again, Europeans coming around, what would be now modern day European people coming around and spreading the good word of Christianity. Fair enough. African religions, however, have had a very different terms of, and it was very different in terms of like mythos and myths and the gods that they choose to worship. African religions, this is from another site, African religions hold that there is one creator God, the maker of the dynamic universe. Myths of various African people relate that after setting the world in motion, the supreme being withdrew, and he remains remote from the concerns of human life. According to a myth of the Dinka of South Sudan, God withdrew from the world after the first woman lifted her pestle to pound millet and struck the sky. The story, which is found in many traditions across the continent, explains that although this withdrawal introduced turmoil, sickness, and death, it freed humans from the constraints of God's immediate control. African religiousness is not a matter of adherence to a doctrine, but is concerned with supporting fesudinity and sustaining the community. Pretty much about the same thing as any other religion almost. but is more community oriented and more focused on the people and not the book and not the writings of the book or what's inside the book. It's more so concerned with the people and the community that's around it. These are kind of things that have a major impact on the overall faction, or the overall, how do I say it? The overall feel and appeal of African religions at this point. That little passage that I just read was obviously after the ancient Egyptian, and to be honest, Egypt has always been its own little separate entity as far as gods and creations and everything of that nature, because they always kind of never coincided with each other. So it was really one of those things that, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's really one of those things that is a bit difficult to tackle, in all honesty, because the original word and verbiage and rituals of African people have always been tailored towards community wellness, the sacredness of the elderly and people who have passed on, and being more so oriented towards a solid one God system and a solid one God approach, so as to not anger the supreme being or supreme ruler. And they also believe that everything that happens is because God wants us to be dismantle itself from us, and he keeps us from trying to replicate his perfection, if that makes sense. All right, second point, Christianity. And this is going to be a short section because it's just kind of giving you a brief history of how Christianity got into Africa. Christianity was first introduced into Africa in the northern part in the 1st and 2nd centuries after death. The Christian community in North Africa were among the earliest in the world. Legend had that Christianity was brought from Jerusalem to Alexandria onto the Egyptian coast by Mark, one of the 4 evangelists, in 60 AD. Simple. It just kind of give you a brief overview of it. Simple. Now, because I'm not going to make this very long, I could make it very expansive. I could make it very, very long. I could make it like an hour long, but this kind of discussing religion is something that's going to trigger a lot of people. So I'm not going to make this extremely long because I don't want to expose a little bit of my personal bias, but I'm going to give my personal opinion. Christianity, at its first front value, and at its face value, I mean, not front value, but at its face value, is a religion that focuses on the spirit. Well, not even of the spirit, but is a religion based on a person or teaching of Jesus of Nazareth and his belief and practice. So pretty much the teaching of Jesus Christ. Just want to get it. It's just the teachings of Jesus Christ, and to be honest to your neighbor, to be good to your neighbor, and to pretty much treat others as you would want to be treated yourself. However, this is the common thing between a lot of religions, including Judaism and the Islamic religion. It's one of the first things that are actually taught in each of these religions is do unto others as you would like done to yourself. Point blank, period. My personal opinion on Christianity is right now is in a stalemate, because you really cannot logically think and kind of go straight into it. There's so many other religions that can mesh with you a lot. And in the black community, and the reason why I want to talk about this, because in the black community, we are kind of forced to do this from a young age, and that's the bottom line of it. You go against the church, that's pretty much it. They're going to probably disown your ass, in all honesty, but that's kind of the main basis of this. And I wanted to kind of touch bases on this because there was religions and kind of infrastructures and worshiping of different gods before Africa was ever introduced to Christianity. Now, Christianity in and of itself is not a bad religion, but given to the wrong people and the wrong misguided understandings of it can turn into detrimental and very heinous acts of cruelty. Case in point, anytime that a European that was not so headstrong or massively crazy, a la anybody who owned slaves, who thought the slaves were beings that God gave to them to do whatever with, you're pretty much fucking crazy. People like that is what makes it hard to get into, Christianity in that sense. So Christianity in and of itself is just the teaching of one man, which is Jesus, on the same level as Muhammad, on the same level as pretty much any messenger or vessel that God has taken upon himself. He preaches that I am here to take on your sins, because humans by themselves are sinful creatures, in the words of the Bible. And he gives up himself, he does these miracles, and he sacrifices himself at the end of all the stories. And I think that's the same for Muhammad. I am not sure. Double check that if you will. However, again, in the wrong hands, it can be used for detriment. So just picture this. Of all this, because Christianity had been inside of Africa for a long time, but it was in northern Africa for the majority of it. So picture this. It's, I want to say 1425, give or take 1425, maybe even 1500. Slavery starts to kick in. You have the triangle trade, you have the slave trade, you have all these things going in, and they're just kind of plicking and plundering Africa for themselves. You get a group of people, fresh group of African people. They cannot speak the same language as you. They do not understand what you're saying. They just understand that we are away from home and we want to go back, or we need to get back to where we are from because we don't feel comfortable here. The first thing that they would do, aside from, beating the shit out of them and killing a couple of them, and check out, episode, if I'm not mistaken, episode 1 about the Willie Lynch theory, or maybe a couple episodes back in the season 1 about the Willie Lynch theory and how to make a slave. Check out that video. Very, 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 very educational in that part. It kind of just summarized it up. So that's pretty much what they did. Then that breaking down of the mindset continue, because not only have you now destroyed the black family structure by pretty much demasculating the man and giving the women this image of protecting their boys, and pretty much like throwing their female children to the wolves, because that's just all they knew. It's just all about the boys, keeping them alive, while just saying women can do everything that you can to survive on your own. I have to worry about your brother and everything of that nation. Just as a simple paraphrasing to it. So just imagine that the black family structure is destroyed. The man has been emasculated, most of the time being sold off or killed at some random point. So there's no man in this young, in the young households, and in the black households. The young men don't have anybody to look up to. They just kind of get not abused, but just kind of there, in all honesty. So imagine that, along with beating into the brains of African people straight off the boat. And this is probably what happened first. I don't know, but if I had to guess, they would beat African people until they submitted to their God, and they would possibly say that, our God is not one to boast or brag or have us fight unnecessary fight, because our God is putting us through this test to see if we can get back to where, back to a mindset and get back to a situation to where we're more familiar with. They took that away. They took the worshiping of maybe even one God or a couple gods, or the rituals and they took all of that away, and they beat us. They beat African people until submission, until they just couldn't take it anymore, and they just accepted it. And that's what it is now. And I don't want to knock anybody for being religious and going to church, but that's the main reason why. You weren't born this way. I mean, not born this way, obviously, but you weren't born thinking that there's only one religion and that's it. That is a system built inside of the African people going back to the 15, 16, 1700s, where, you know, even probably even earlier than that, where we were beaten to pretty much say, this is your God. This is Christ. This is your God. And they showed us this picture of this white man, and they beat it into us. They beat it into our brains. This is the Bible. You listen, you take this, and you do not question it. And if you question it, you got to beat some more until you submit it. And that was it. And that was the main purpose of this whole endeavor for Christianity, was not to save people. It was not to enlighten people. It was not to get everybody on board with this singular idea of, oh yes, this is Christianity. This is how it's supposed to be. And this is how God does things and how God wants things to be done. And none of that. It was literally beating into submission. So now we do the same. It's a rinse and repeat cycle with this shit. We were beaten to love Jesus Christ and love everything about this religion that is totally not even ours. It's totally just forced upon us at this point. Be mindful. I'm not saying it's just strictly forced upon us, but be mindful. In the earlier part, you know, in the first and second centuries, it was in the northern parts of Africa. So be mindful, it was already there. But taking us, and you kind of taking us from our place of inhabitants, and I say us because we are descendants, but taking Africans from their place of inhabitants and beating them, you know, forcefully, teaching them things that they're probably weren't even ready to learn, but they had to for survival. It's just something that is done today, and it's in the black community. It's kind of a disgusting thing, as we, at least when I was growing up, I was kind of forced to go to church. There was no, oh, you know, I don't want to go to church because I don't believe in this religion, or I want to choose my own religious beliefs or anything. No, it was, you got your ass up on Sunday, every fucking Sunday, religiously, or you're just gonna get your ass beat. There was no choice. And I don't see a difference in what, you know, slave owners and colonizers did to us then as our black parents are doing to us now. If you want me to be completely honest, we're getting forced to believe in this one religion as if it's just the only religion that is there. It's not. So in my personal opinion, I think Christianity is in and of itself good, but people make it a disgusting, intolerable piece of shit. And that's how it is. And I don't want it to be like that. I know Christianity is a very holy and sacred religion, and it can be used for good. It's like Catholicism or Judaism, or, you know, the Muslim faith of Islam. But given to the wrong people, it's meant for control in that sense. And if you give it to the wrong people, it does start to be reminiscent of, oh, here's the control aspect, or here is, and that, you know, let's just go ahead and throw this in there and hopefully this works. So we're just gonna beat them until they just submit and get into their memory, and that kind of that muscle memory, like, oh, this is what is going to happen and this is what is going to go down, and if you say anything different, you're probably about to get your ass beat. And that's just how it is. So final thoughts is, Christianity is in and of itself good. Just don't give it to the wrong people, because they can misconstrue and give the message that's not meant to be given, or give some forceful message that totally throws everybody off and makes people not want to go into the religion. So for me personally, I am a spiritual person. I'm following the, you know, the spirit through and through. I don't belong to any major religion. I denounce major religious beliefs a little bit after my 16th, 17th birthday, because I didn't see a purpose in it. I didn't see a purpose going into this church and doing something that wasn't at all holy, because most of the churches I've been to, and I'm not saying all churches are like this, but most churches I've been to were just full of a bunch of hypocrites, and I didn't like it, and I started to see that. So kind of went different from that, and it was just, these kids were there and they weren't enjoying it. They weren't enjoying their time there. They weren't enjoying learning about God. They were just forced to be there on a Sunday morning because mom said so. So as they did to us in slavery, we do to ourselves. Beat our kids and teach them the good old gospel. Yep, that is our Jesus Christ and our Lord Savior Jesus Christ, and you better love him or I'm gonna beat your ass. That is literally the mindset that's been held on to for a overabundance of years. So with that, that concludes this episode. I love y'all, man. I love y'all. So we getting back on track with everything. So I'm gonna upload at least 2 to 3 videos today. 2 to 3 videos. I'm gonna be posting different links. Currently, my computer, as I said, is not connected to the internet, so it's probably not gonna be face cam videos for a while. Just generally because I can't get it to connect. It won't go to any website, so I'll probably end up getting a new one or using my brother's computer. I don't know, but we will be kind of getting into that as aspects later. Also, going to be uploading, sending, how I did last time with the schedule. Gonna be sending it to my Discord, and I'm gonna be sending it over to my IG and my Facebook, just for people to hop on and kind of give their opinions on when they want to, or kind of different things of that nature. So if you want to be a part of this experience, it's a lovely experience. It's just us sitting here talking. It's like a big ass conversation. If you want me to be honest, it's just a big ass conversation, and it's a lovely conversation. And we talk about everything. We talk about things that need to be talked about, things that may not need to be talked about. We joke around, we play, and a bunch of shit. Right now I'm riding a solo because most people are busy, and I understand that, but I'm gonna be riding a solo for a bit. We gonna hop back on the shit. We gonna be good. I want y'all to have a blessed day. No pun intended. I want y'all to have a blessed day. Be successful. Go out there, get what you can, do what you can do, and have a nice one. Live a nice life. Don't let nobody get you down. And peace.